Welcome back to another edition of the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast with you, as always, Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, NFL.com, Sam McDowell from the Kansas City Star. My name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB. Thank you for joining us here as we talk some Chiefs football. The 53-man roster is set. JuJu's a Chiefs again. The Chiefs trade for Cam Thomas, a defensive end. What's it mean for their defensive ends? Peyton Hendershot. Yes, that's a real name. The Chiefs gave up a 7th-round pick for him. He's a tight end. He's number 4 for them. Did they get it right there? Did the Chiefs figure out the wide receiver spot? What did they get wrong? What's the biggest surprise? Where are they the most vulnerable? What are our biggest takeaways from the whole process? Plus, there was a little bit of a vote. Is it really news? Voted down, voted no on a Chiefs tax. Sam McDowell's been covering that all throughout. We'll get his thoughts on whether or not that's anything any of us need to be paying attention to. We do it right now here on the Red Gold and Bold podcast.
You are listening to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Chiefs on planet Earth, breaking down the Chiefs like no one else can. Red, Gold, and Bold is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro. Jeff Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Sam McDowell is the sports columnist for the Kansas City Star. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by David Starnes Allstate Insurance, covering all the important things in your world: home, business, life, and even the fun stuff as well. Motorcycle, boat, ATV, you name it. Get with Dave and he'll have you covered. You can give Dave and his crew a call, visit them online, or stop into any of their locations, including North Kansas City, Liberty, and Branson, Missouri. Elevate your coverage, elevate your confidence, and drive worry-free. Don't put those insurance needs off any longer. Get with Dave. He'll give you peace of mind today for the things in your life most important to you. Now, here are the hosts of the Best Chiefs podcast, Jeff Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro.
Thank you very much, Curtis. We do appreciate it. Episode 163 here of the Red, Gold, and Bold. We don't always give the number. I thought I'd give it. That's a pretty good number. We've been at it for a little while here. Jeff, Sam, Soren, with you talking about the 53-man roster. It finally came out. Sam, you were on my radio show today. It only took, a little over, about as long as it took Tommy Boy to graduate from college for them to finally put the roster out. You love that, don't you?
Yeah, I thought I was predicting the safe end when I said it was going to come out at like 10 till 5, and I was still an hour and a half in front of it. Am I muted? Am I muted? Am I good?
No, yeah. It's a minor
Finally
miracle.
can hear you. Yeah.
It's a minor miracle, but well done. Yeah, I don't know. Like, why do they take so long to put it out there, Jeff? You have any idea why it takes them 2 hours after the deadline to finally get those things out there?
Yeah, 3. Good question. I have no idea. Because by that point you should have told everybody who's being cut that they're gone, and I have no idea. It's very bizarre, but I think hearing Sam talk about it's an annual event now, right?
Yeah. It's like, now we anticipate it, right?
Yeah.
Like we're on the edge of our seat thinking, okay, this is how it has to be done. All right, let's start with some of the guys that are there. Let's start with the fact that they went out and signed JuJu Smith-Schuster, Jeff. He had been out for 17 days since he'd been cut by the New England Patriots. My assumption is this is something that he's like, yeah, let's get a little closer to the regular season. I don't need to be going through any training camp. And then I'll sign back on. They get him for the league minimum. Patriots paying most of his salary. What do you make of JuJu Smith-Schuster?
I was asked this today on your radio station, 810, and I said the same thing. I don't have high expectations for him coming back here. I know that he was a big part of what they did a couple of years ago, but you look at his resume at New England, it was pretty disappointing. Couldn't stay healthy. I think he's more of a 5th or 6th option for you. Now, it's nice to have that guy be your 5th or 6th option, but ultimately there's guys they like. This makes me wonder, okay, how long is Hollywood Brown going to be out? Are they worried about Rashee Rice? He can do a lot of the things those guys would be asked to do, but ultimately I think he's a better option if he's a backup receiver than Justin Ross or Kadarius Toney.
What your thoughts on getting JuJu Smith-Schuster, Sam?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's certainly fair to wonder first and foremost how much he has left. And it's a weird thing to say about a 27-year-old, but remember when he left here 2 years ago, when he left Kansas City, it was because of a knee injury that they did not offer him more money. And New England offered him the money because they didn't think the knee injury was going to be detrimental to his career. Well, they were wrong. I mean, he suffered injuries throughout his New England tenure. And just a year later, he's looking for a new home already.
Yeah.
I do agree with Jeff. I think this is an insurance policy for what they already do have. And when you look at JuJu Smith-Schuster's year in Kansas City, like the best you can get out of him, he's really good in the 0 to 9 yard range, the underneath routes. 62% of his targets were 0 to 9 yards, by far the highest percentage of any wide receiver on the Chiefs during that year. The only guy that does that for the Chiefs really is Rashee Rice. And we've all been talking about for weeks about, is the Rashee Rice suspension coming? There's reasons to believe it could be delayed. There's also reasons to believe maybe the NFL doesn't want to see him on opening night. And JuJu Smith-Schuster is the guy that I think they think potentially could run those routes because they're not confident yet that Sky Moore can.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's Rashee Rice insurance because that's the guy that he's. This isn't Hollywood Brown. I saw a lot of people go, "Oh, this doesn't sound too good for Hollywood Brown." That's not it at all. He's a completely different kind of receiver. And so he's much more like Rashee Rice. And so, but listen, is he better than Kadarius Toney? Let's be honest. Or Justin Ross. One of those two guys was number 7 until JuJu Smith-Schuster bumped either one of them or 2 or 3 or 4 of them down, wherever you want to place him. I mean, is he better than Kadarius Toney, Jeff?
Oh, yeah. Is that a real question?
Well,
but I will push back on they were asking Hollywood Brown to run more routes that he was not running in previous teams, right? He got hurt on a crossing route, an intermediate crossing route in that Jacksonville game. So that's some of the stuff that is in JuJu's wheelhouse. But yeah, I mean, there's no question that what they were going to be asking some of those guys that they just cut, I'd rather ask JuJu Smith-Schuster to do that kind of stuff, even on a bad wheel.
Quick prediction. What do you think we see out of JuJu, Sam? You got some yards, touchdowns. Like how much do you think he's going to get used? Obviously, part of that depends on Rashee Rice and other guys getting hurt. But ballpark me. What are you feeling here?
15 to 20 catches, maybe. But the thing about Andy Reid is he can't not use somebody who's on his roster. I mean, if you give him a weapon,
a toy,
he's gonna try and put him in the mix. So I did think that JuJu Smith-Schuster spoke to us local media today. And I thought he had pretty reasonable expectations for his role. He said he doesn't know if he's going to be ready for opening night. When have you ever heard a player say that? Says he's got to dig into the playbook, and I can't tell you if I'm going to be ready by next Thursday. He also said that the wide receiver room is better than what he left. That he commented on Xavier Worthy's speed, on Hollywood Brown's talent. I mean, I thought he had reasonable expectations to where I actually thought we potentially got a glimpse into his interview with the Chiefs, which had to include the question of, are you okay being a secondary player here? Because you're not going to be a go-to target the way you were when you left. He led the Chiefs in catches, led receivers in catches and yards, and that's not the role that he can come back to now.
Yeah. I think 300 or 400 yards. I think it might be a little bit more than you're thinking, because I think Matt Nagy likes him. And so I think they'll be a little bit something for him. Jeff, you got a ballpark for what it'll do?
I think it's less than 300. I think Sam's right. I think it's about maybe 18, 19 catches and maybe kind of Sky Moore numbers.
Okay.
I'll put it there. That's Sky Moore territory.
Okay. We're proudly brought to you by our friends at David Starnes Allstate Insurance, serving the greater Kansas City area and all throughout the Midwest, covering all the important things in your world, home, business, life, but also fun stuff as well. Motorcycle, boats, ATVs, you name it. Get with Dave and he'll have you covered. With David Starnes Allstate, it's the peace of mind you get. You can elevate your coverage, elevate your confidence, and drive worry-free. Give Dave and his crew a call, visit them online, or stop into any of their locations, North Kansas City, Liberty, Branson. Don't put those insurance needs off any longer. Get with Dave. He'll give you peace of mind today for the things in your life most important to you. All right, let's talk a little bit about another move that they made. They trade for defensive end Cam Thomas, former third-round pick of the Arizona Cardinals. They give up a future 7th. Jeff, your reaction to this move?
it tells me that FAU is still not giving them what they want, or not making them feel confident about his progression. And look, I root for the local kids, want to see them all do well. I think it's always cool when you see a guy growing up in your area go off and have great success, but he's a first round pick and he still hasn't gotten into the rotation. It didn't look strong in the preseason. And so this feels like, all right, we've got Karlaftis, we've got Mike Dana, and who else is going to rush the passer off the edge here? I know this guy's not a stud pass rusher, and it does give me pause that he was drafted in 2022 and he's already out of a bad team, but they need help here. And that's what I think they're getting it for.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit today, Sam. I kind of like a little bit of the video that I see. I don't think he's not blowing anybody off the line. He's going to be a coverage sack guy, but most defenders are. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. There's only a couple of Lawrence Taylors and Aaron Donalds and Derek Thomases and Reggie Whites that either just blow somebody into the backfield or go by somebody like a lightning bolt. But he looks like a max effort guy, has a little bit of waist bend. I like some of the things I saw out of this guy. Are you a fan of this move?
Yeah, because I mean, you could put a drinking game to the amount of times I've said this, but the Chiefs' depth on defense is an issue, and it was foreseeable that they were going to have to add from the outside to fix that because they added nobody from the outside other than their draft picks. And so at some point, you've got to supplement your roster with some additions that are veteran players. And I thought that if it didn't come in free agency, which it never did, first wave, second wave, third wave never came during free agency, it was going to have to come during this waiver wire pickup. In fact, I thought they could make 2 or 3 additions. I know we're getting ready to talk about a second one because tight end was not one of the 2 or 3 spots I had, but I thought you could have made an argument for edge rusher. You could have made an argument for cornerback. You could have made an argument for running back. And I still think they were looking for multiple positions to add to their roster. They find something at defensive end, to your point, Soren, that is an effort player. And that's not a bad quality to have if you're a depth piece. And I mentioned it on this podcast last week that Chris Jones doesn't play every snap, and he plays fewer snaps than people think he does. He's usually in the high 60%, or about 70%. To means 1 out of every 3 snaps, you're going to have to play a backup on the field. And to Jeff's point, if you don't feel comfortable with the development of Felix Anudike-Uzomah, you better go get somebody.
Yeah, I like the move. Edge was one of the places I thought that they were looking all throughout training camp. I said it a couple times. I wouldn't have been shocked if they had brought in some kind of veteran. They've done it before. They've done it several times. Melvin Ingram, the Clemson kid that played for the Bengals and Seahawks.
Carlos Dunlap.
Thank you. That's something. And with Charles Omenihu out, this is a no-brainer. I mean, it does mean that some of their young guys didn't blow up. But I saw a stat. He has 3 career sacks. And I can't remember what it was, and I apologize. I had a little bit of time, but was busy tonight, and didn't look this up. But his 3 sacks, if you take out like Mike Dana, Chris Jones, and George Karlaftis, those 3 career sacks are like almost more than it's more than all the rest of the edge guys. Sam looked it up today. Tershawn Wharton's got 7, but like he's one of the more accomplished players automatically on their defensive line and certainly on the edge. Look, FAU, we've had a couple things. I've put it up there. FAU's a bust. FAU's not a bust. FAU's not instilling them with a lot of confidence. It doesn't mean he was very young when they drafted him. He was a build your body up type of guy. Football players are either fat guys that are working out to keep themselves in shape, and they're big guys, or they're smaller guys that have to build themselves up. He's a build himself up. And so you knew there was going to be a little bit of an adjustment. I wouldn't write him off yet.
Sorry to interrupt, Soren, but I do think that's a point we need to underscore because I don't think we have underscored it enough between the 3 of us. Is his age and his body type was not suited to be ready to be a contributor in year 1. I've been a little disappointed that we haven't seen that jump in training camp for that reason you just underscored, because those are totally legitimate reasons why he didn't produce last year that I don't think we considered enough as we were navigating through his rookie season.
Yeah, and I think this is a real deal. FAU as a number 1 pick needs to produce. Hasn't shown anything. But yes, fact. I mean, he does need to produce it. It's not going to excuse the draft pick, but he didn't pick himself, right? So don't hate the player. This is a Brett Veach decision, right? Or a Clark Hunt decision to take a local guy when the draft is in your backyard, whatever the reason was, it's the pick. It's not the player. So listen, he wears a Chiefs uniform. If you're a Chiefs fan, you should root for him. But yes, the pick is a disappointment at this point. There's no way around it, but it's not done. There is still time for him to develop. But I do think Cam Thomas brings a little something and at least gives them depth. As you said today, Sam, they play all those guys. So he's going to get in there. He's going to get a run. So he's, you better hope he's pretty good. We're brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City area for 30 years. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. It's been nationally recognized. They're a full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Parking lot problems, they've been making them disappear, like I said, since 1994. Accidents, liability, you don't need to risk that in your parking lot. Get your lot restriped today. A smooth, brightly striped lot cuts down on accident, keeps your parking lot safe, keeps your customers happy. Make a great first and last impression with your customers, your clients. Gann Asphalt and Concrete can do that for you. One contractor, all things parking lot. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. The other addition is Peyton Hendershot. Jeff, you were, as I understand, 7-8 chapters into writing the book about Peyton Hendershot, his life memoirs. Yeah. Had you heard of Peyton Hendershot before he was acquired today by the Chiefs?
I just watched the movie Horizon by Kevin Costner. It's 3 hours. It's way long and way slow. I think that was a character in that movie. And that's the only time I've ever.
By the way, since you brought that up, is that
might not have been, but it sounds like it should be a character in a Western.
Is that a good movie? Should I be checking that out?
No, it's a 3-hour movie, and there's 3 more parts that are 3 hours long. So it's like a 12-hour movie.
Yeah, I know. I'm gonna pass.
Don't go there.
Okay,
you
good.
can. But no, like I understand the move here. I let you guys talk me into believing Irv Smith can make this team a couple of weeks ago as a 4th tight end, and I didn't want to believe it. And now he's gone. This guy makes a little more sense because his skill set is different than the other guys who are playing tight end for this team. He's more of a blocker. He can, he'll play on special teams for you. I don't think he's here to do anything more than just to be on short yardage situations and be a backup. So, yeah, I think he makes more sense than Irv Smith in that spot.
Yeah, Sam, he's the Blake Bell, right? This is the guy that's the blocker and the special teams guy, right?
Yeah, I mean, the reason I had 4 tight ends making is the Chiefs used 13 personnel, like more than double the average NFL team. And I thought you don't want all of your available players at one position on the field at one time. You want a backup for them. But Irv Smith did not do enough to make the team. He actually made a play today. They practiced before the cuts, and I thought that's kind of the first play we've really seen Irv Smith pop in training camp, and it was too late. To Jeff's point, Hendershot can play special teams. He's played 400 special team snaps in the last 2 years, despite missing half the season last year. He still played over half the special team snap a year ago. So if you're going to be a 4 tight end on the roster, you've got to have value beyond just being 4th on the depth chart and tight end. And he appears to have value beyond that.
But I do like this. Hendershot was the fake name Clint Eastwood gave in Unforgiven. So there's definitely a Western.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
There's definitely a Western angle to it. So does this mean, Sam, that he'll be running the quarterback sneak?
I don't know if we ever talked about it, but Carson Wentz is a stud at quarterback sneaks. He is better than Jalen Hurts. I looked up the statistics of it right after they signed him. He has a better success rate than Jalen Hurts does at quarterback sneaks. If the Chiefs want to run a quarterback sneak, maybe you could use a quarterback to do it.
Yeah. It'd be nice. I do think they're going to do that. I think they've been looking. I kind of like the Malik Willis for a 7th round pick just to be the quarterback sneaker, right? I wouldn't have minded seeing him brought in.
But Wentz is good at it.
I know.
Wentz is good at it.
He's good at it.
Carson Steele in behind him and Hendershot on the edge. Man, look out.
What are we
like? Barry Switzer running the offense back in the 80s.
They do have like kind of an old Cam Thomas is kind of a Western. Carson Steele definitely is. He's just been deputized, or he's the Sheriff Carson Steele. They definitely have a Western cast to the names that they're running out there with their with a lot of the guys that are making the squad this year. We're proudly brought to you by our friends at Northland Injury Law. Did you know that they're Kansas City's Google 5-star rated personal injury lawyers, voted #1 in Kansas City. That's right. Number one accident lawyer in Kansas City, helping people with serious injuries, car accidents, work accidents, falls, any other serious personal injuries. Their attorneys have been serving KC for more than 40 years. They don't get paid unless they get money for their client. That's right. They don't get paid unless you get paid. Don't wait, get compensated. Now, if you have a case, text HURT, H-U-R-T, to 22222. Again, if you have a case right now, text HURT to 22222 or call 816-400-HURT. That's 816-400-4878. The choice of a lawyer is an important one and should not be based solely upon advertisements. Text HURT to 22222 to get connected 24/7. Again, Kansas City's voted number one accident lawyer in Kansas City. It's Northland Injury Law. When you call them, make sure you tell them that the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast sent you there. All right, guys, let's talk a little bit about the Chiefs wide receivers. We mentioned JuJu Smith-Schuster, Jeff, but how about the rest of them? No Justin Ross, no Kadarius Toney, no Nico Remigio. They do keep McCole Hardman. They do keep Sky Moore. And they, of course, acquired JuJu Smith-Schuster. Wide receivers as a whole, did they get it right there?
Look, but so much of this is really based on the top 3 or 4 guys. So it still comes down to Rice, Hollywood, Xavier Worthy, and Justin Watson. Maybe Sky Moore can be something down the road. I think McCole Hardman gives you some pop as a returner. And then we talked about JuJu. It's really imperative for the Chiefs to stick with what worked with them at the end of last season, or the second half, when they were more determined to get the ball to certain players, as opposed to having this big canvas for Andy Reid to go and create upon. I just feel like it's going to be more of the same. It's those 3 or 4 guys at the top. And if the other 3 guys can help in the offense, that's great. But I think their role is to be more insurance than anything else.
Yeah. You liked what they did ultimately out of the group that they had and the one that they brought in with JuJu Smith-Schuster. Did they put the right combination together, Sam?
How many did you say they kept?
7.
7 wide receivers. Okay.
I thought it was going to be 8 the way it was going.
Does anyone who's listening to this podcast think I'm going to say they got it right when they kept 7 wide receivers? Again, people are so focused on the who, and it's mind-boggling that the how many has just been comfortable with 7, even though it was a disaster that they kept 7 wide receivers a year ago. Go ahead, Soren.
No. Because I wanted you to go ahead and finish your point. I was wrong to start to interrupt, but I do want to ask you something when you get done with it.
I think the concept of 7 wide receivers is only going to create chaos. It's not going to create all these options to use at the perfect time that they think it is. And if you want evidence of it, I said it before last year started, and it was a disaster from opening night last year. When the quarterback is only playing 20 to 25 plays with his 3 and 4 wide receivers, he doesn't create chemistry with them. Last year, it took the Chiefs until late December, even January, before they figured out what options are they going to run with their wide receivers. And now they're setting themselves up for this, because I just don't think that Andy Reid is capable of leaving guys on the bench and burying them on the bench. I think if he's got 7, he's going to use 7.
Let's go with this. Matthew says, do they drop a wide receiver after Hollywood comes back? Brad said the same thing. 6. They've only got 6 because 1 is hurt.
You don't need 6 either.
So let's just stay with this. What would you have kept? And then so if it's only 5,
I would have kept 6 with Hollywood injured. I don't know who's going to pick up McCole Hardman.
So who do you got?
McCole Hardman was available as a free agent until July.
Okay, so to be clear, so McCole Hardman's out. That's what you would do. You'd go with 6 with McCole Hardman out. And then who do you put back on the roster that was gone?
What do you mean?
From whatever other position you want to do.
You get rid of Hardman.
Yeah, you're not going with.
Oh, yeah. I think a 5th defensive tackle makes sense. So whether or not you like Neil Farrell or Matt Dickerson more, I think Deion Bush makes sense. I think he gives you value on multiple spots.
Who's your returner then?
My returner is the guy who's willing to do this and fair catch a punt, because I've got Patrick Mahomes on my offense. And you said McCole Hardman could pop as a returner. Like, I mean, your heart pops whenever McCole Hardman is the return man. It's the most interesting play in the press box to watch, is a McCole Hardman return. Because you're right. I mean, he can make something happen, but the first part you have to make happen is catch the ball in the right spot. And are we sure that part's going to be executed? Returning kicks, I put Carson Steele back there, and I think you could pick Sky Moore or somebody like that if you want to get some value out of another wide receiver.
I'm not enamored with Sky Moore going back on any kind of return.
Are you enamored with McCole Hardman going back on returns?
A little bit more.
It lost them a game last year.
What would
He
remind
had some big returns earlier in his career, though.
He did. Remind me what game did he lose?
Well, in Denver, they were down a touchdown, and he fumbled at his own 5-yard line. I think he took the blame after the game. And look, I do want to point out, because I don't think people get the peek at these players that we do. McCole Hardman is a great guy to chat with. I mean, he's as good as anybody in that room to chat with. He's terrific to us. I love that McCole Hardman's on the team because I love chatting with McCole Hardman. He's much smarter than I think people give him credit for as well. But I think part of the reason people don't get credit for is because he doesn't always make the best decisions as a punt returner.
By the way, I do love this one from Flatlander. Hard to watch a Hardman return with your hands in front of your face. No. I think that was great. I get your overall point, and I don't love 7 either. And for all the reasons you stated, I have no argument whatsoever to any of the reasons you stated. I mean, are you okay with it, Jeff? That it's 7, or would you rather have 6? Do you have the magic number that the rest of the league likes to go with?
I feel if Hollywood Brown was healthy, it would probably be 6. But I think he makes it 7 just because of his situation. But I agree with you guys. Yeah, I think 7 is too many because just as last year, it creates this impression that all these guys can play for you and make plays for you. And that's just, we learned that wasn't the truth last year. What reality last year?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think when we talk about, where else could they have gone? Sam hit on it, like D tackle, right? So at the wide receiver spot, I think they got the right players. If you told me, listen, we're going to keep 7, what 7 do we keep?
Yes.
I might have put Remigio in over McCole Hardman, but I think McCole Hardman's a better wideout right now.
Yes.
And so I think they got the 7 right.
I agree.
7. If I were going with 6, I would drop Sky Moore, but we all agree that Sky Moore was number 5 on this list, right? Probably he's 5. I mean, JuJu may get used more, but for whatever reason, they're going to try to make it work with Sky Moore. And I give him the opportunity. I've mentioned this on the radio a couple of times. Devontae Adams didn't have 600 yards receiving until his 3rd year. Wideouts sometimes take 3 years for it to click. So maybe it's going to click this year with Sky Moore. But back to Sam, but then you see Sam's original point. How can you, if your coach insists upon having 5 plays for every receiver you have?
Yeah, then Devontae got way more targets.
Yeah. Yeah, eventually, yes, but and there's no way that there's going to be a lot of targets right now because he wants to feed every guy that's out there, and that's a problem, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a major part of Andy Reid's offense is he's really good at finding what players are best at and using that. I mean, McCole Hardman's development within the Chiefs offense is a great example of that. They tried to run McCole Hardman vertically as a rookie and as a second-year player. Then they realized, wait a minute, this guy is better with the ball in his hands than we realized. And he's great on jet sweeps because McCole Hardman is willing to take a hit. He's a guy who's my size. I think people just assume that means that he likes to run, on the outside the numbers, but he's willing to stick his head in there on a jet sweep. And he became really good at that. He was second in the NFL in his 3rd year with the Chiefs at yards after catch per reception because Andy Reid realized this is his strength. We're going to play to his strength. He's great at that. But I think he's got too many guys that he's got to keep track of, and trying to keep track of all those guys. I think it's a recipe. I was going to say for disaster, but instead it's a recipe to repeat what they did a year ago for the first half of the season.
Yeah. Listen, it is, everyone can talk about, well, they won the Super Bowl last year. Yeah, but they weren't barreling towards it early. Sam's point is valid. The offense struggled all year long, and it finally came together when they quit throwing the ball to all the different guys. And they just started throwing. Rashee Rice got better once he was in the game all the time. There's no, and in my opinion, Sam, there's no argument to what you're saying. Like there's, and I don't, not that anybody in the chat room really is, but somebody said, well, what's the point of keeping some other kind of fringy guy as opposed to keeping, a wide receiver until Hollywood Brown gets back? Okay, that's fine. Let's see what happens when Hollywood Brown gets back. I'll tell you about where somewhere else they could have gone here in a second. First of all, I'll tell you, we're brought to you by our friends, David Starnes Allstate Insurance. With David Starnes Allstate, it's not just about fender benders. Beyond traditional safeguards, you can enjoy perks like roadside assistance, transportation expense coverage when your ride needs a pit stop, auto replacement protection to keep you on the road in style, and much, much more. Elevate your coverage, elevate your confidence, drive worry-free. Give Dave and his crew a call, visit them online, or stop into any of their locations, including North Kansas City, Liberty, and Branson. Don't put off those insurance needs any longer. Get with Dave. He'll give you peace of mind today for the things in your life most important to you. Give him a call at 816-781-7331. That's 816-781-7331. They can connect you to whichever location is closest to you from that number. Again, it's David Starnes Allstate Insurance. Call 816-781-7331. Where did they get it wrong? Besides wide receiver, Sam, we know you're at that point. Jeff, do you see a spot where you go, they got it wrong here?
I'd have preferred to see 4 running backs. I like generic Prince. I feel like there's still some questions about that area. Now, maybe Carson Steele, I do believe, is going to have a bigger role and can do more things for you. But Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a little bit of a mystery as far as his availability. And look, Prince has been around for a while, and I thought he made some plays, and it wouldn't kill you to have a 4th guy at that spot over maybe a 7th receiver. So that's the only place I would say. And then probably corner, too, is going to be an area where I would imagine they have to be combing every last part of the NFL to find somebody who can come in here and help at that spot, because that's a train wreck right now.
Okay, Sam, where do you think they got it wrong?
Well, I don't know if this is where they got it wrong, but I'm gonna take this just to say this is where I think they maybe still could get opportunity to layer onto what Jeff said. Samaje Perine is really intriguing to me for the Chiefs. He's a guy who caught 50 catches out of the backfield last year, and the Chiefs desperately, to me, need a 3rd down running back. That precise skill set, somebody who's confident in catching the ball out of the backfield. He's a vested veteran, so he doesn't have to go through the waiver process in order to get to the Chiefs. He just gets to pick his team, and the Broncos cut him. And to me, Samaje Perine should be a really intriguing option for this backfield.
Yeah, the running back spot is interesting. I will grant you that, and I'm kind of surprised. I thought they would go 4 there and 3 with the tight ends. They did find the blocking tight end. That makes sense to me on what they did with tight end. But I'll go back to something you said earlier, Sam. D tackle, big people, man. It's just like 7-foot centers don't go up and down the floor. They can't play for 42 minutes, and 340-pound run stuffers can't play all day. They already asked Chris Jones to play a lot. They've already got on the roster, Mike Pennell, which is usually their go-to spot coming down the stretch to try to give somebody a break. Well, he starts the year on there. And I, as we all know, am president of the Mike Pennell fan club, so I'm excited that Mike Pennell is on this team. But Chris Jones, Derek Nottie, who I cannot figure out how they haven't been able to upgrade yet, Mike Pennell and Tershawn Wharton. That is it along the D tackle spot. Now, I do think maybe this gets easier. I'm surprised that, what was it, Neil Farrell, the trade with the Raiders. I'm surprised he's not here. I thought he definitely looked better this camp than last camp.
He wasn't here for camp last year, but I do think he looked better this year than a year ago. Yeah, you're right, Soren.
You're right. He did not.
He looked like he had taken a step forward, though.
He looked better than what I remember seeing the little bits we saw of him on Chiefs game. That's a good point. I guess I didn't see him in camp. But he looked a lot better than what I saw from him in camp, actually, because he looked like a zero last year. But I thought, okay, there's at least a big body that you can put next to Chris Jones and run a stunt and have him run into Chris Jones' guy and hopefully get clear. Be a glorified blocker up there and give the other guys a breather. They have to be looking for D tackle. Jeff, you said corner. They got to be looking around for a defensive tackle that they can add. And listen, this is a position that in his 14 years with the Eagles, Andy Reid's initial selection, whether it be a first round or if he didn't have a first rounder in the second round, he took a defensive lineman. And they have just kind of hung their hat on Chris Jones. Chris will take it. I mean, it's almost like, hey, we gave you $35 million, big boy. You're going to earn it. And I would rather say, hey, we gave you $35 million, and here's a wingman to make sure that, you are fresh and we get everything out of why you're worth $35 million. Because a worn-out Chris Jones, there are times we saw it last year. I got 2 guys. That's good. I've done my part. And I'd rather have a guy, Chris Jones, play a few less snaps and be hell-bent and coming after him, and he's going to play a lot. Yeah. And that, to me, is a problem. And I'm when we look and say Lucas Niang in the 3rd, we look and say FAU at pick 31 because, the last pick in the first round because the Dolphins lost a pick. But FAU there. Who else do we got they've been very good in the draft, but especially in the later rounds.
Sky Moore.
But Sky Moore in the 2nd round. Josh Kando in the 4th. There are all these guys that you're just kind of like, well, wait a minute. Colin Sanders was solid. I didn't mind Colin Sanders. But Derek Nottie, Dorian O'Daniel in the 3rd round. Now you can start to get back where you're into guys that have been free agents anyway. But just too many 2nd and 3rd rounds. There are quality, give you 25 snap defensive tackles that are available in those picks. And they haven't got them. And that to me is, I think that is kind of stunning. And they threw away another pick on, what they give up, a 6th for Farrell? And now he's gone?
Yeah, it was kind of, I don't know how you guys felt about it when the cuts came out, but I was almost like when we were doing our roster projections, it was hard to kind of fill in the blanks with some guys because there was a lot of mediocrity. But I was kind of like, well, if this guy's going, who are you keeping? if this guy's gone, who's filling this spot? Like, and you're right. Defensive tackle was an area where I thought Neil Farrell was a no-brainer just because of the size.
Yeah.
You know who a defensive tackle that they could have used in the later rounds, Keandre Coburn, who they drafted a year ago, and they cut him to make space for Neil Farrell. Coburn, from all reports in Tennessee, had a terrific camp, and he made the initial 53 in Tennessee. And you can't help but wonder if I'd be surprised if he wasn't good enough to make this initial 53 man. And speaking of which, to somebody's question earlier that said, okay, if they kept 7 wide receivers, if they cut one, who from last year's roster do you see making this year's roster? There's a name right there. If you keep 6 wide receivers last year, Keandre Coburn's probably still on your team right now today.
Yeah, that's a great point, Sam. I agree with you, and I would love to have seen what was going on in the draft room when they took Keandre Coburn, because he does not look anything like a Steve Spagnuolo guy. Right? He's the short plugger type. He's a long, lean.
So is Colin Saunders, though.
I agree, and neither one of them are here. So what's
but he played his full rookie contract out though.
He did, and he got a pretty good chunk of change from the Saints to go down there. But you get my point. Like, draft the guys that he wants, right? Like, what's the point? And there does seem to be a couple times, like Keandre Coburn. I was like, okay, there might be a little something here, but he never did seem to fit what it was that his defensive coordinator wanted to do, right? Like, that ended up being, just kind of the way, just like, okay, this guy isn't exactly who they want. We're brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, with free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project coming with a written warranty. Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer, helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. You can find them online right now at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Make your appointment right now if you're looking for seal coating. Need to get it done before the weather turns cold. It's still hot. We got some hot days coming in for the next couple of days, but fall is coming. Weather starts to turn cold, then you're racing the calendar. You're racing the thermometer. Don't do it. Call and book right now. 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. You can find them online at GannAsphalt.com. Biggest surprise, Jeff? What was your biggest surprise out of what they ended up keeping?
I would say, out of what they kept or who got let go of?
Any of it. Any way. What was the biggest surprise?
I was surprised to see guys like Deion Bush go, guys like Cole Christensen. Farrell was a surprise. I mean, really, I guess I could come back to the cornerback situation. I guess the surprise is they haven't found somebody yet. I just don't think you can trust what they have at that position moving forward right now. So that's whoever's there. I mean, it's not a group you can trust.
Okay. Sam?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think the theme of what Jeff said is Dave Tobe didn't win as many arguments as he usually does. In
Yeah.
the
He
initial
lost them all.
53.
Yeah.
He was pounding his fist on the table with Remigio. He must have dented the table because he didn't win that argument. But to me, the biggest surprise is Christian Roland Wallace came on really late in camp. He was running almost primarily with the threes until we broke St. Joe. And then they decided to move him a little bit to slot cornerback and realize who else on the roster could play this position. He played a lot of snaps in the slot late in the preseason, even played some safety. And I think they thought this guy's smart and potentially is a development project that will find a position for him at some point. And to Jeff's point, nobody else beat him out. And so if nobody else beats him out, you might as well take the guy that you think has the highest ceiling that you could develop into something.
Yeah.
And Keith Taylor got cut too, right?
Keith Taylor did get cut.
Yeah,
and I had Keith Taylor Kelvin Joseph got cut even yesterday.
Yeah.
I thought Keith Taylor or Kelvin Joseph were battling for that spot. And look, they could have been. And they both could have just lost the battle, according to the Chiefs in that last preseason game.
Yeah. I no idea that Christian Roland Wallace, I'm not even sure if you told me to write down the corners that are in camp that I would have gotten his name. And so I did not see that one coming. That's my biggest surprise for sure. And I do think the quantity of defensive tackles that they kept is a surprise. I'm not really shocked. The wide receiver doesn't surprise me. The tight end move doesn't surprise me. JuJu doesn't surprise me. I didn't predict it. I didn't think they'd go for it, but I understand why they did, the familiarity. I'm not stunned. Anybody stunned by Lucas Niang being gone? I think it's the right move.
No, but I tried to put CJ Hansen on my roster projection twice, and you guys kept saying, he's going to their practice squad. He's not good enough to make it. There he is.
Yeah, there he is.
On the 53-man roster.
Yeah. No, for sure. But
that actually suggests to me that they had some intel that CJ Hansen was going to get picked up.
I agree. Yeah, because the vibe that they were giving off was that they thought they could get him to the practice squad.
Yes.
And they may even have been sandbagging what they were seeing to try to get the word out to other teams that we don't like what we see. But they obviously do. And listen, it speaks to, they drafted these guys to replace probably a couple interior guys, not Creed Humphrey anymore, but Joe Toney, either to develop one to replace Joe Toney either next year or the year after, but Trey Smith the next season.
And Nick Allegretti too. I mean, you still need that backup role too.
Yeah, for sure. So, I think but Driscoll, I'll give Tim Grunhard credit. Ethan Driscoll, he's like, hey, Driscoll versus Yang. He said, I think that's the last spot on the offensive line, and I would take Driscoll. I liked what I saw out of the kid. 6'8", long. He looks like what they like at the position, and so why not? I mean, Lucas Yang didn't even play that much, and he still managed to get hurt on a fairly regular basis. So I like their decision.
And you start over the clock, too, when you make that decision. If you've got a battle, you might as well start over the clock on the cheap labor, so to speak.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree. All right, where are they most vulnerable, Sam?
The positions that I think, first of all, cornerback is top of the list. So I think I was searching for something that's other than cornerback. And to me, the most vulnerable if Isaiah Pacheco gets hurt. What happens at running back, which is why what I mentioned earlier, that Samaje Perine is a really intriguing option to me because you don't have to wait on waivers with him. He's a vested veteran, and you can get him tomorrow. You can sign him tomorrow. And I would think a guy that played for the Broncos last year, played at Arrowhead, would have a lot of intrigue with joining a team like the Chiefs.
Yeah. How about you, Jeff? Where are they most vulnerable?
It's corner. I keep saying it, but it's the low-hanging fruit here. And the fact that, Spagnuolo had mentioned this a week or two ago, just that the secondary hasn't been together for an entire training camp. Like, they've been a long time it's been a long time since they've all been on the field at the same time, which is going to affect your chemistry, and a lot of things can happen when you're trying to play pass coverage with those kind of limitations.
I will tell you, I think it might be defensive tackle. I'll go back to that spot, and I'll quote one of my former board ops, Garrett Bull, who, when I said, what happens if Trent Green goes down? He said, we're effed in the A. And I think if Chris Jones goes down, that's exactly where the Chiefs are. Because I did not think it was going to look this thin, right? When they cut it all down, I didn't think it was going to look this thin. And I don't think it would have if there were one more defensive tackle there. And that again, I'll come back to the surprise of it. But, when they did lose Chris Jones a couple of years ago with Steve Spagnuolo, Eric Eager and I coined it two fatties in a blitz. They threw out Derek Nottie, and they had picked up, by that time, they picked up Mike Pennell, and they, threw those guys, and then they blitzed everywhere. Derek Nottie's not the player he was back then. And if they lose Chris Jones, I mean, it looks rough. It looks really rough the way I see this one. All right, the whole process as a whole, Sam. What's your biggest takeaway from the whole process? Anything?
Well, it's taken us a long time to get here, but Kadarius Toney is gone. This bizarre marriage that the Chiefs were infatuated with is over, and the Chiefs at so many levels of this story told themselves they needed Kadarius Toney. They said they needed him when they traded so many assets to get a guy who there were red flags galore when a team is saying, even if they change head coach and GM, they're saying, we've got 2.5 years left of this guy. We need to rebuild, but that's not a guy we want to rebuild with. That should have been the first red flag. The Chiefs didn't get this guy for free like they got JuJu Smith-Schuster for free this week. They had to give up 2 assets, which, as we've talked a lot about, the Chiefs used middle round draft picks pretty well in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round. They departed with that to acquire Kadarius Toney because they thought they needed him. They thought they needed him last year on opening night. They rushed him into action after missing all of training camp because they thought they needed to have Kadarius Toney. They win the Super Bowl without him. They still think they need him as training camp starts. And at some point, this needs to be a lesson for the Chiefs that these types of players don't matter when you have Patrick Mahomes and when you've got Travis Kelce type leadership. I think the Chiefs think they can bring anybody into their locker room and make it work. And I realize that, there's some hypocrisy here because Rashee Rice has a background in incidents. This Kadarius Toney thing is an everyday thing. It's a guy who didn't pay attention to the small details of the game, the guy who didn't show tremendous interest in being in Kansas City or playing football altogether. And I just think it's got to be a long-lasting lesson for the Chiefs here.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a great point. I don't understand. Their definition of talent and my definition of talent are very different because they grossly overrate his talents. Jeff, what would you take away from the whole process?
NFL parity is still undefeated. That if the Chiefs do repeat, I love your guys' confidence in this, but this will be their most difficult task because you see what happens when you're a great team and you go through this process every year of trying to draft well and you're losing players, and you're trying to pay players. At some point, you're in this position they're in where you still have some stars, you still have a great team, but your margin for error gets thinner and thinner with each passing year. That's why I haven't picked them to three-peat, because I think it's going to be really hard if they have any kind of injury issues, especially on the top end. In the star area.
That's interesting. My kind of takeaway from the whole process is one, it's kind of a combination of the two. It is hard to win when you pay the quarterback. It's hard when you then pay the defensive lineman. Like it's showing how thin they are. They are stars and Jags, well drafted in the later rounds. There's better depth than you would normally think of as a stars and Jags team, but the depth is really. I mean, you see it when you see this roster, and it goes from being 5 deep, and you see it we're cut down to here, and you're like, wow, one injury, and where do they go? Where do they turn? The reality of the salary cap. When anyone tells me, "Oh, the salary cap's not real," I don't know. Look at this roster. I mean, they're and it also tells me that the other thing that I take away from this is there are certain people in sports that you have to sell your soul to. If you bring LeBron James onto your basketball team, you're selling your soul to him. You're going to get him the players he wants to play with. You're going to have to get whatever he wants, even though it's not enough shooters and it's not enough young guys and they don't play enough defense. You want LeBron, you sell your soul to LeBron. When you have Andy Reid, you sell your soul to Andy Reid. And there is, to Sam's point, no reason to have 7 wide receivers, and there was no reason to be screwing around with Kadarius Toney, and there was no reason to give up what they gave up for Kadarius Toney. And yet, but Andy Reid likes his toys. And, it's great to have Steve Spagnuolo, because Spagnuolo even said once last year, well, we only get this many reps in practice. Like, he kind of pointed out, like, practice, like, we got to get the offense in. So, like, the snaps that are just for the defense to do their things are kind of few and far between. But you better find a defensive coordinator that's okay with that, because Andy's worth it. And LeBron James is at least used to be worth it, right? As I watch this, it continues with 7 wide receivers again, even after that didn't work. And Sam, you even said on my show not long ago that it was a little bit of a, that there were people that were kind of like, yeah, we know it didn't work. And here they are with 7 again.
Yeah.
This is the cost of doing business in the NFL. If you hire Andy Reid, you're going to sell your soul to him. The good way outweighs the bad, but it is part of the process for sure. All right, I want to mention this just because I had some people asking about it. We'll finish with this. It won't take long, I promise. There was a vote. Jackson County voted down. Sam, you've been covering the stadium issue on the Missouri side, on both sides, but I know you were very much all over everything that was going on in Missouri. 5-4 it lost for a chief-specific tax. This is not a big deal because why?
Well, I mean, first of all, you've got other options to potentially put on the ballot, but I just think that the quick synopsis of this is the Chiefs need to have a plan this time before it goes to a vote. I think their biggest lesson they learned from last time is they need to provide the public with more details, and also potentially different details if Jackson County is their preference. The Chiefs haven't yet reached a decision, and I think this is a county legislature, members of the county legislature, that want to prove that the Chiefs are still in their minds, that there still is an effort there. But I don't think this is the effort that the Chiefs were pinging their hopes on, that this is their option to stay in Jackson County. Although I do think it would have to go to a vote eventually at some point. I just didn't view this as the one and only shot to make a second attempt at Jackson County happen.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody thought it was going to pass. When we were there, you were standing with me up at training camp when we were asking questions of Mayor Lucas, and he said the voters have made their statement. They voted no, right? Like, and so I don't think he had any idea, any thought that this was going to be passed. And I don't even know what they were going to do with it if it did. So, yeah, I mean, they gotta do a lot more before we see anything coming out from the Missouri side of things for sure. But there is still time. End of the year is probably what everyone's pointing for. All right, that's going to do it for us. Remember, we're proudly brought to you by all of our great sponsors. We hope that you will be able to, go by, let them know you heard about them here on the Red, Gold, and Bold. David Starnes, Allstate Insurance. Elevate your coverage, elevate your confidence, drive worry-free. You can give Dave and his crew a call, visit them online, or stop into any of their locations, including Kansas City, North Kansas City, Liberty, and Branson, Missouri. You can give them a call right now at 816-781-7331. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot, whether it's building new or fixing what you got. They work in every angle, every possible way with your parking lot, making it better with free consultations, no commissions, and in-house crews. Every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com. And, of course, Northland Injury Law, voted #1 accident lawyer in Kansas City. Kansas City's Google 5-star rated personal injury lawyers are Northland Injury Law. They don't get paid unless you get paid. Text HURT to 22222. Get connected 24/7. That's HURT. Text HURT, H-U-R-T, to 22222 to get connected 24/7 to Northland Injury Law. For Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network and NFL.com, Sam McDowell from the Kansas City Star, I'm Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.